Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Profiling Evil Live. Right out of the gates, I'm not suffering with high blood pressure. I don't know what happened with the red face. It has something to do with the lighting. I had to run to the southern part of the state, and as many of you know, because I was trying to upload last night's video en route down here. Did a little favor for my good friend Annie Elise over at 10 to Life. Out at the FLDS and spent the day with the polygamists. So it was a pretty interesting day. But nonetheless, how are you all doing? It's great to be with you. What a day. I listened as I drove and attended some meetings and then some other things to the Alex Murdaugh testimony and cross-examination by the prosecution, and then the rebuttals. And what I did tonight is I tried to coalesce it, cut out all of the repetitive, you're a liar, liar, pants on fire rhetoric, and get down to some of the, I guess, more consistent themes that kind of touch on some things that maybe we can talk about. But I want you to feel free to call in tonight. I'm going to stick the link in right here if you want to call in and chat. And we'll talk about the testimony. I'm going to play the testimony. I'll watch the chats that are coming in, and we'll try to figure out when to stop and when to talk. So hello to Michelle Morris. Good to see you. Simplify. Thomas, Lee, thanks for jumping in and moderating. Crystal, moderating. Alicia, thank you. Laverna Cornish, thanks. Kitty says she's made it to the live. So anyway, great to see you all piling in. And again, I want to know what you think, how you feel like things are going. It's the thing that's been kind of interesting to me is the information on Twitter and many of the channels was frustration that the court, the judge, the defense, the prosecutor are allowing Murdaugh to ramble on. And yet every time he does, he makes up something new. I mean, this has been really interesting to watch. And he can't even remember the things that he said the day before. Does this make him a killer? I don't know. And I'm going to be interested in what you think. But you certainly can't say I'm not. And I lied about all these other things, and I'm not lying about this. If the physical, forensic, circumstantial, behavioral, admission, everything else kind of points that maybe you were. And I don't know how you feel, but I feel really strongly. I said it then, and I'll say it again, that the only reason I felt like he took the stand was because he thought he was in a really deep hole and had just enough arrogance to think that he could talk his way out of it. It's worked for decades, according to his testimony. So we'll see what's going on. And and thanks. Yeah, the fire. We have so much snow up north. I drove last night. At times I was driving 5 miles an hour. Didn't get in till 1 o'clock in the morning because of all the snow. Got down here and there was snow this morning when I was out at the polygamous community. I was in about mid-thigh deep snow. And it's a cold year this year in Utah, but man, I am so glad. So let's get started. I think I'll just go right into the testimony. And again, I'm going to watch your comments. In fact, let's just take a quick second and see. Smiling Wolfette, looking at it as a hypothetical juror, I can convict 100% on financial crimes, just not the murder. Well, there you go. Yeah. And you know what? If one person feels the same way, it might be the same kind of problem. Patty is saying Alex was gaslighting Water so much that he was getting him angry then Alex would call Waters out on untruthful stuff. So yeah, that kind of interesting, because we were seeing him kind of get in a couple of positions, and I think you'll see it tonight, where both sides were getting pretty dang tired of each other. Run the world, guilty liar. It will be hung jury, though. Yeah, this will be interesting. And boy, we've seen cases with less than this that do. The other thing that I said on a bunch of national news programs, and I kind of got teased a little bit early on, was that I thought Murdaugh would testify. Just something about his personality. And boy, we're seeing, can you imagine having to be his lawyers and trying to keep him tied up and from doing something? Well, anyway, I hope you'll hit the like and subscribe button. Again, we're going to just spend some time, listen to the court. I'll watch the chats, and periodically we'll jump in. And if you want to jump in, I'm going to post it again here. There's a link you can pop in, and we can chat a little bit. Otherwise, let's get going with this thing.
I asked you a series of questions yesterday about at least relating one conversation you had with one of these clients. And I'm just going to ask you this one. Do you remember looking Tony Satterfield in the eye and lying to him?
I remember lying to Tony Satterfield, and I remember looking him in the eye on many occasions.
And lying to him?
Yeah.
Okay. Lying to his family?
I lied to his family. I don't know if I did it in person, but I know I had phone conversations with him where I lied to him.
Okay.
More than 2,000 milligrams a day.
And how many pills is that?
It depends on the strength.
Well, let's say it's the
Of the
30s
pill.
that you just mentioned.
If I took 30, if I had 30 milligram pills, you figure 100 pills would be 3,000 milligrams.
100?
100.
So you're taking 60 a day or something like that? I mean,
There were days where I took more than that. There were days I took less than that.
And how would you take them during the course of the day? I mean, how many are you taking at one time? How frequent in this time period, let's say January to June?
You know, there's a point in time, and I'm not sure when it was, I think it was well before that, where, and you have to understand this. This is something that I can still remember the first time I ever took an OxyContin.
Murdaugh, can I ask you to answer my...
So I want to pause there for a second, because I agree with what you're saying. I mean, how could this guy have survived? And I know without a doubt we're going to have some medical people on tonight listening in. How could you take 3,000 grams of oxycodone or OxyContin and survive that? I can get the building up a dependency that means I got to take more, but I don't know how on earth can that happen. So Michelle says, and I don't know if you're saying this to me, let him talk. Look at the things he mistakenly says. He can't keep his mouth shut. As a retired medical professional, okay, Michelle, I want you to weigh in. No way did he take that much oxy. So yeah, Michelle, would you kind of text in? And didn't you think it was interesting in the testimony? Because I immediately went, and I want to see how many of you did the same thing. I immediately went to Google, and I started figuring out what are the side effects of oxycodone or OxyContin. And yeah, sweating is one of them. But sweating and nausea and everything else, just like going on them, is the side effect of coming off of an addiction as well. So let's just see here. I'm interested in what you have to say here. Let's see. No, well, yeah. Cat's saying no human could take that much. And yet, you know, I've talked to people that have prescription drug addictions. The opioid challenge is certainly a big deal in the United States and abroad. and they can take that. But boy, I don't know. Yeah, here's Crystal saying, what about 18 years of tolerance being built up? Let's see. So this is interesting. Smill and Wafette, I went many times where I would take up to 20 plus pills a day. All right, so what if you were taking 5 times that many, 100 a day? And of course, I don't know weight wise where you are and if that makes a big difference, but I don't know. That's interesting. So yeah, in his testimony, he was taking 30 milligram tablets. Let's see. Here we go. Miss Leah saying, I'm prescribed it for chronic pain due to failing liver, and there's no way I think a human could even with tolerance survive that much. Wow. Yeah. And hey, thank you for that super sticker. I really appreciate that. And I know that there was another one, Smug also, or Snug with a Pug also gave a super sticker. And folks, thanks so much for those. They really do help out. And I really appreciate it. Make sure you're hitting the like and subscribe button and ringing the bell and all of that stuff. But yeah, I think we're all kind of in the same boat, wondering how on earth that could happen. Here we go. That's not typical to have someone addicted to opioids and not have people notice. Well, I think testimony came out that people were noticing, that his family was aware. Now, his law partners said that they weren't aware. That would be interesting to know the depth of that knowledge and if there was some covering. I don't know. Avery, thank you so much, Avery Shannon. It's a buildup. 20 years ago, my uncle maybe took 5 to 10 a day. He's now well over 60 a day. He's built up a tolerance. It's sad. Well, there you go. We often talk about possibilities and probabilities, and I'm leaning more with the possibilities, and I'm still having a hard time. I think he's just digging as hard as he can for sympathy and a reason. But I'll tell you what, if you're that out of control, could you lose your temper and commit a homicide? I don't know.
And we'll let you explain all you want. And my question was, how many were you taking a day during this time from January to June? Answer that first, please, and if you want to explain, I'm happy to let you do so.
I'm not positive, and here's why. It's because over the years, like as I was saying, the first OxyContin, one OxyContin made me sick. And that was when I was transitioning from hydrocodone to oxycodone. And it made me sick because it was a really, really, really strong one. And so, one OxyContin pill was like 10 hydrocodone pills. So, but anyway, as I took more and more, and over the years, it just, you build up a tolerance to pain pills. And so what might give me this energy, one of the reasons I became so addicted is, some people talk about pain pills and how they make them lethargic and, where they can't do anything and they feel. Opiates gave me energy. I mean, whatever I was doing, it made it more interesting. It made me want to do it longer. To go on a drive, it made driving, it just at the beginning, it made everything better.
Now, I want to pause there for just a second and again get some of your comments here. As someone who's spent my career studying behavior, this was really interesting because I don't know if you caught how animated he started to become when he talked about how he felt when he was on opioids. So I have no doubt in my mind personally that he had an addiction. Whether it was 100 pills a day, I have no idea. But just fantasizing even and remembering. Think about something that you think about that really brings you a lot of joy. And when anyone ever asks you about it, as soon as you start talking about it, you get a little more animated. Your face gets a little happier. You just everything about you, your complete aura changes. And that's exactly what happened when he started talking that way and talking about taking those drugs. Wendy Red, thank you. Super sticker. That's really nice. Let's see. Yeah. He could be so agitated he'd commit murder. Interesting. I don't know. What are your thoughts here, folks? Yeah, opioids give energy, runs out every month, goes through terrible withdrawal every month. Wow. Rebecca's saying, yeah, so high on pills, he couldn't hardly function. Probably forgetting a lot. Yeah. I think, Brittany, you're right. He probably really enjoyed it. Again, wasn't that interesting to watch his behavior when he jumped out and started talking about that and how animated he became? These are the kinds of things I would always look for when I was interviewing a serial predator, to establish a baseline and then to establish what was really motivating him in the course of their crime. Anyway, let's go back.
I took so much just to keep, it got to a point where I was taking so much just to not backslide or go into withdrawals or have all those symptoms. And so it got to the point where I was taking the amounts that I came to be taking in the time period you're talking about, January to June. My whole life, you wouldn't see me where I didn't have pills on me. And that's where I kept them. I kept them on me because I was scared to put them somewhere for fear somebody would find them. So I kept them on me. So if you saw me, I had pills on me. I had a pocket full of pills on June the 8th. On June the 8th, when I was sitting in David Owen's patrol car.
Remember calling Paul a little detective?
I don't know that I ever called him a little detective, but I think Maggie did. I may have. I mean, Paul was very intuitive, so.
Okay. Brr, buzzer. How many of you heard him call Paul a little detective? I want to see if you're weighing in on that. Again, it's so interesting to listen to him and how he evolves. And, you know, it was interesting as you watch Creighton Waters, if he paused long enough, Murdaugh would try to fill the silence, just couldn't stand the silence. And again, from a behavioral perspective, makes you think he's probably used that ability to be an orator. And you know what? He probably was incredibly liked when he talked about things. But I don't know. Let's see.
Said that during one of your interviews?
I heard Miriam call him a little detective. I know Maggie used to call him that.
Did that have anything to do with the pills?
Well, yeah, it had something to do with it. But I mean, Paul was always that way. But that what led him to be called a little detective, certainly there were times when Paul found pills.
Including just a month before the murders. Is that correct?
No, sir.
You recall 6/5/23 that was entered into evidence, which is a text from Paul to you?
I do.
Which he said that Maggie found pills in your bag?
Right.
Tell me about what happened after that.
You asked me about Paul finding them, but it was Maggie that found them.
Fair enough. So it was Maggie that found them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But Paul's the one who reached out to you, correct?
On that occasion, yes, sir. Now, there were a number of times where Mags found pills, Paul found pills, Bus found pills. I mean, it was an ongoing, it was just an ongoing battle for me. Well, you just asked me this. Mr. Ward, if you keep making an issue about first time you hearing these things, when I got arrested and I went to jail, we began reaching out to you to talk to you about all of these things, to try to tell you everything that I'd done, to give you all these details to help y'all go through these financial things. And up until the time that y'all charged me with murdering my wife and child, you would never give Jim Griffin a response to our invitations to sit down and meet with you.
So you're telling me I never responded to Jim Griffin? Is that what you're saying here today?
I'm telling you.
Are you saying that you ever before yesterday reached out to anyone through yourself or through your attorneys and reached out to anyone in law enforcement or the prosecution and told them the story about the kennels? Are you telling me that?
What I'm telling you,
answer my
Mr.
question
Waters,
first, please, sir. Answer my question first. Did you ever reach out to anyone in law enforcement or the prosecution and tell that story that you told this jury yesterday about the kennels before yesterday?
did I ever reach out to law enforcement to say, I want to tell you about the kennels? No, sir, I did not.
This is the Fifth Amendment line.
Pardon?
This questioning about him volunteering information on these charges violates his Fifth Amendment rights, and we strongly object. Any more, we have to make a motion.
You brought it up.
The objection's overruled.
What I did was,
Answer my question first, sir.
Your Honor, for the record, he did not bring it. He was talking about financial
Sit down,
stuff.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes or no question. Before yesterday, did you ever bring up what you told this jury about that kennels to anybody in the prosecution or anybody in law enforcement?
no, I didn't have the opportunity to, Mr. Waters, because you would not respond to my invitations to reach out and tell you about all the things that I'd done wrong. And to talk about bringing this to a head, to talk about bringing this to closure. I understand how many people I hurt. I understand how angry my partners are and how hurt they are. And I understand how hurt these people that I stole money from are. I understand how hurt they are. And one of the things that I believe is getting past this may help them get some closure. And so since at least January, I've been trying to sit down with y'all to talk to y'all.
Okay.
And never, ever got a response to the multiple requests.
Multiple requests?
Yes, sir, multiple requests. I would ask about this
Murdaugh.
every few
ask
weeks.
this, sir.
Sir?
Did Mark Ball ever hear your story to the jury about the kennels until yesterday? Your buddy and law partner, Mark Ball?
Listen, I haven't spoken to Mark Ball since I went to rehab.
And these were the same law partners that you were listening to the night of. Is that what you testified to this jury earlier? You testified to that earlier, did you not?
I don't understand your question.
Didn't you testify earlier that you were listening to your law partners on the night of the incident?
Was I listening to them?
Yeah, you testified to that. It's a simple question, sir.
I'm sure I was. When are you talking about?
On June 8th, in the early morning hours, you testified to this jury that you were listening to them, but you never told them the kennel story either, and they heard it for the first time yesterday as well. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's the first time they heard it.
First time that Ronnie Crosby ever heard that would have been yesterday?
If he was listening, that would have been the first time he heard
First
it.
time Johnny Parker ever heard that was yesterday?
Yes.
First time Danny Henderson, who was representing you in the boat case, ever heard that was yesterday?
Yes, yesterday is the first time that I have said that openly. But that's not what you were asking me, Mr. Waters, but you go ahead,
First time your brother Randy heard that was yesterday.
if he was listening. And Mr. Waters, just to be clear, I was begging for a meeting with y'all to try to bring this to a close, to talk to y'all about everything up until the time that y'all charged me with hurting Maggie and Paul. Now, after that point in time, I stopped, obviously.
You're claiming that you were begging for a meeting, but you admit information was never conveyed that you wanted to change your story after multiple interviews with law enforcement about what happened that night, including the most important fact of all, which is when the last time you supposedly saw your wife and son alive was.
I don't know exactly what was conveyed or not to you because I wasn't part of it. All I know
Fair
is
enough.
what
You don't
I
know
was
what-
trying to do was to sit down. I understood to bring all this to a close that y'all would want me to sit down and go through all of these financial things, all of these things that I'd done wrong, and to try to bring that to a close. I was repeatedly trying to sit down with y'all.
The reality is, Mr. Murdaugh, is the reason why no one's ever heard that before is because you had to sit in this courtroom and hear your family and your friends, one after the other, come in and testify that you were on that kennel video. So you, like you've done so many times over the course of your life, had to back up and make a new story that kind of fit with the facts that can't be denied. Isn't that true, sir?
No, sir, that's not true.
Okay. You've done that over and over again over the years with all of this that we've been talking about, haven't you?
I've done what over and over again?
The second that you're confronted with facts that you can't deny, you immediately come up with a new lie. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Waters, have we established I have lied many times, but I can't sit here and tell you that, what are you talking about, facts that I can't deny? That I would disagree with that proposition.
I have lied many times, but believe me now. I don't know, folks. What are you thinking now? Been a lot of discussion going on in the chat about whether this is a good prosecutor or a bad prosecutor. And, you know, I mean, we don't have to like him. What we have to do is see that he's getting a repetitive theme in the mind of the jury. And we didn't get to see that jury selection process. So we don't know what kind of folk that those people are on the jury. But if this is a jury filled with people of high integrity, that becomes pretty significant to have someone reminding you over and again, oh yeah, I lied about that, but not about this. Oh yeah, I lied about that, but no, I don't like the way you're saying I lied about this. I don't know. Can you have it both ways? You either have credibility or you don't have credibility. What are your thoughts on that, folks? Let's see. A lot of folks saying they don't like him. A lot of folks saying they do like him. And this is interesting. Alec is a successful attorney and a professional liar making millions lying. Well, I hope he made millions protecting people and getting them settlements that they deserve by being injured because of some form of negligence. The sad part is he stole much of that money from people, and we're going to hear that covered more and more as this thing goes on. Today, this is interesting. I didn't realize this. Witch in the tinfoil hat. Is this accurate? I would assume you're right. Today's the 4-year anniversary of the fatal boat crash with Mallory Beach. Pretty sad. Could you imagine having that happen? Anyway, yeah, and here's one interesting. If Paul hadn't had that Snapchat video, I wonder if we'd have been where we are today. So interesting. Linda, I think you've made a pretty interesting thing. Okay, he's admitted he basically lied about his entire life, but when it comes to killing his wife and sons, we must all believe him. I'm not buying it. Guilty. Yeah, that's going to be the question. And again, all he needs is one on the jury to say, but gosh, my heart's breaking for him, and I think maybe he's telling the truth. And you know what? He might be telling the truth. But I'll tell you, as this thing kind of swings back and forth, you got to think about all of the evidence in totality, not maybe his testimony today when it's not backed up by forensics and other things.
Putting out that was what I did all the time, but in doing that, I admit again that I've lied to people that trusted me.
So we can agree that the prosecution and law enforcement and so many of your friends and family heard for the first time your story about the kennels yesterday after all these weeks of testimony. Can we agree on that?
That law enforcement, my partners, and my friends heard me say that for the first time. Yes, I agree with that.
Thanks,
That
Don
your
Marie.
own lawyer
or Don
was
Burke.
repeating your story that you were at home napping as late as November of 22 on national television.
I don't know.
You don't know that?
No, in jail, we don't get newspapers, and the TV we have is limited, so.
So your own lawyers, at least as late as November 22, didn't know this story that you've told to this jury after 5 weeks of your family and friends coming in and saying, yeah, that's him on that video.
I don't know.
Objection, Your Honor, violates attorney-client privilege communications. Totally improper. Totally improper.
Yes, sir, in response.
He has brought up his communications with counsel, and now that is fair game, Your Honor. His communications through counsel with, or alleged communications with the prosecution.
He didn't.
There's no attorney-client privilege to national television interviews. The objection is overruled.
Are you waiting for me to answer, Mr. Waters, or did I answer?
I think the point's made.
All right, sir.
You said you were unaware of that national television interview, is that what you said? You were
Unaware of what national television
The
interview?
one where your lawyer repeated that story as late as November of 2022. Your story that you were actually home asleep at the house.
The
during the 8 o'clock hour.
only national TV ad that I'm aware of is, not ad, program, is one that Mr. Griffin was involved in, was are you referring to like a Dateline something?
I'm talking about HBO.
Okay, HBO. All right, so yeah, I am aware of that. And what I believe the case to be is that I believe that when that was in its works, that Mr. Griffin made those statements sometime substantially before November of 22, as early as around the very beginning of 2021.
Well, let's talk.
At least what I understand to be the case.
All right, let's talk some more about your testimony from yesterday. And you're telling this jury, even on something as clear as a skin video, that your story doesn't change when you have to make them fit the facts that no longer can be denied. Is that what you're telling this jury?
I don't understand that question. Say that again.
I said, you're telling this jury that you don't change your story to make the facts fit evidence you can no longer deny, like what's been going on in this courtroom.
I'm not telling the jury anything about that.
All right, good. All right, let's move on. Let's talk some more about that issue. Let's talk about the confrontation on June the 7th with Jeannie Seckinger, which you said was no big deal. Isn't that what you testified? Words to that effect?
I think what I testified to is that, to me, it certainly didn't seem like a confrontation. Jeannie came to me and was almost apologetic. And this is what I believe, Mr. Waters, is I believe that what Jeannie Seckinger and my partners have had to go through since September has been hard. I know I could see it. I could see the hurt that I caused them. And I know that they're betrayed, and I know that they're angry, and I know that they're hurt. And I want to make clear to this that while I disagree with what Jeannie said as to it being a confrontation, because I don't believe that it was, I don't think that she was lying. I think that she feels it. I think that, you know, she believes that that's the case after all this time that she's had to deal with this. But on June the 7th, when she came to me, she was almost apologetic. You heard her say that she said that she wouldn't be doing her job if she didn't do this.
So I got to stop there again. Did you notice yesterday when he was talking about the law firm and he said, I went to work, kind of a normal day at work, and then I came home and we had supper. He didn't say, hey, I went to work and they accused me of stealing millions of dollars and I will never be going back because I'm going to be banned from the law firm. And now he's saying, oh yeah, did you notice she was really apologetic that she's even looking into this. I don't know. And thank you for those kind super chats. Things were rolling in at a moment when I couldn't really respond. And I just want to say thanks. So Melvin the cat, thanks. And Sonia, thank you so much. And yeah, how do you read his emotions? Well, I guess I would be reading them much like you are. The difference is when you're doing a profile, you do a whole lot of victimology and a whole lot of suspectology so that you get to know this person a little better. You know how they react when they're talking about things that were good, things that were bad. I guess the thing that I'm finding so troubling, and many of you are saying it, is that he's only patching holes in the ship where they fired a missile through. And that just doesn't look as good. Hey, I know I've been lying about everything, but believe me now, I'm having real trouble with that.
Made clear to me that someone had said this, that I had to make sure that income came through the firm, that I couldn't structure money. In other words, I had the impression that there was concern that maybe, like Mark Ball and Ronnie Crosby said, that maybe I was hiding fees because of the civil boat case. But that conversation was so quick, Mr. Waters, that you keep using the term confrontation. I didn't take it as a confrontation.
And you're telling this jury you're not making that issue fit?
I didn't take it as a confrontation that I've been stealing millions of dollars from the law firm and I'm being fired and having my name pulled from the ranks and I'm going to be publicly humiliated when the truth comes out. Holy cow. I don't get that. But let's take just a minute, because a lot of you are asking, is there enough circumstantial evidence to convict him? So you need to understand that circumstantial is one of the primary forms of evidence. So if you think about this, there are multiple forms of evidence. There's physical evidence, maybe the bullet passing through the glass window and into the tree is physical evidence. There's forensic evidence, the blood spatter, the DNA inside of the blood, the fingerprints on the guns, or the location of the OnStar data from General Motors, digitally forensic data. So you got physical forensic, you got eyewitness accounts, and we really don't have any eyewitness accounts, but we kind of do with a mix of forensics with a Snapchat video that puts him there minutes before the murder happens. Not to mention the fact that he lied about the fact that he wasn't even there. And he'd still be saying that, in my opinion, if that video had not been recorded and surfaced. So physical, forensic, eyewitness. We have confessions is another form of evidence. In this case, we didn't have confession until yesterday, and now we have confession that I'm a liar and a financial cheat, but I didn't kill people. So we also have what many people have classified as admissions, a form of confession, an admission, whether you believe it was I did him bad or they did him bad. So now we've got 4 forms of evidence. in this case. Then we have circumstantial evidence. And circumstantial is really a combination of all of it. The thing that says A plus B is always going to equal C. And you can bank on it that if it is a blue sky day and the sun is up, that it's probably daytime. That would be circumstantial. Or I always use the story of when I used to teach this in profiling classes, I would indicate how one day I came home from work early and my little boy was laying on the couch complaining of an upset stomach. And on his face, he had what appeared to be chocolate frosting all over his face. On his fingers, he had what appeared to be chocolate cake and frosting. In the kitchen was a cake that had evidence that somebody had ransacked the cake. And of course, I said, "Did you eat this cake, all this cake?" And of course, you know, as a kid, his answer was, "No, I didn't." Well, all of that equaled circumstantial. So I hope that helps, and I hope I'm not just rambling and driving you crazy as I interrupt. And then as we take all those traditional forms of evidence, what we do in the profiling process is we take all those and we set them on a shelf, and then we go back and we look at the behavior of the drug addiction, the lying, the normal patterns in daily life, like how fast he drives versus how fast he was driving on that night. And all of that behavior, then added with the traditional forms of evidence, make it, in my opinion, much easier to say it's probably true that this happened or that happened. So I hope that helps.
Make your story fit with those facts by saying, it wasn't a big deal, and Jeannie, she's hurt, so she's overreacting now.
No, that's not
got
what
on
I'm
that
saying.
stand and testify.
What I'm saying is exactly what I just testified to, that to me, on that day, that was not a confrontation. It ended almost as quickly as it began, and I didn't think about it again for a period of time until after everything happened.
You testified earlier you get paranoid if a police officer turns out behind you, but you're not getting paranoid when Jeannie comes in here and says, "I need an answer about these fees"?
No, because
I believe you took them?
no, things like that wouldn't cause the paranoid thought and the paranoid thinking. It was always related to pills. It was always, okay, that reaction that somebody just gave me.
It was always related to pills.
Do they know something? Did something somebody said? It was, I mean, the times, that's what, when I had to deal with paranoid thinking, that, you know, if a judge confronted me in the courtroom about a piece of evidence, or if Jeannie asked me about that, those are not things that gave me paranoid thinking.
Okay.
Hey, Ether Bunny, thanks so much for this. I haven't seen you for a bit, so I wanted to shout you out. And folks, thanks for those kind comments about my goofy explanation of the different forms of evidence. Again, I hope that helps in some way. Crystal, yeah, this man can remember details, but he can't remember the last thing he said to his wife. Can't remember actually a lot of things that are very pertinent in this particular case. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. So
You got up that morning, or what time do you think you got up and left that day?
After having the benefit of looking at all these records, I don't know what time I got up, and looking at the records, obviously I've been up for a while, but it appears I left shortly after noon.
Okay. And you went to work?
I did, yes, sir.
And what were you working on at work?
I was working on this Dominion Energy case, was primarily what I was working on, that we had motions coming up later in that week. as I said earlier, I believed at the time that it was the biggest case that I'd ever been involved in.
Thanks so much,
And there were
Tamara.
motions coming up in that. I was preparing, Danny Henderson, my partner that was helping me with the civil case from the boat wreck, had been on me about getting a financial statement, and I finished doing that so that it could be given to Danny. It's primary, is what I remember doing. Obviously, I talked to Jeannie, but
Okay. And what time did you leave?
and I'm sure I did some other routine office things, but I can't tell you what they are.
All right. What time did you leave?
It appears that I left around a little after 6 from the records.
Okay.
I thought I'd left earlier than that, but, I mean, the records seemed to be pretty clear.
And you were, in fact, I think you said in many of your interviews that you were working on the boat case that day as well, your financial declaration.
Yes, I prepared the financial declaration. I didn't do any work in this civil case. So my work in that is what I did. I prepared the financial statement, which took me a little bit of time to get the details on that, but I mean, that was the work I did in preparation for the motions coming up.
And what time did you get home?
In looking at the records, it looks like I got home a little before 7, 6:45, I think, 6:40 something.
Then you and Paul rode the property?
That's
Did you?
correct.
And you told law enforcement you shot a .22?
That's correct.
You told law enforcement that you never saw any blackout?
That I'd never seen a blackout?
At that point in time when you and Paul were riding the property?
No, I did not see a blackout.
Did you tell law enforcement that you and Paul were going around looking for hogs?
If I said that,
Go ahead.
and if I told them that, you know, you don't look for hogs in the daytime, all right? The hogs are deep in the swamp in the daytime. So I can tell you that Paul and I were not riding around looking for hogs. But what we were doing is we were going from food plot to food plot, and we were looking for hog signs, all right? What a hog will do is come out and root, and they tear up food plots, they tear up everything. And so that was one of the things we were doing. But we were not hog hunting. We were not looking for hogs. We did not have the .300 blackout with us.
Okay. Paul didn't have the gun that blackout that he favored with him while y'all rode the property?
The gun that's in here,
Any rifle?
there was no .300 blackout with me and Paul.
All y'all had was a .22?
And that was a .22 pistol, but we didn't have that with us at that time riding the property.
Right. And you testified, you've seen the Snapchat video of you in the tree, is that right?
I have seen that.
And you don't dispute the time of that video, do you?
I don't even know what time that was taken, but whatever the
to
gentleman
that.
came and testified to, I don't dispute that.
All right. And what time, well, let me ask you this. When did you go back to the house? Were you with Paul or were you by yourself?
I was by myself when I went back to the house. I went back to the house basically when Maggie got there.
When Maggie got there. All right. And where had Paul gone prior to that? Was he back at the house already or he came after you?
Paul was at the shop when I went back to the house.
All right. So you beat him to the house is what you're saying. Is that right?
I beat him to the house?
Yeah. You were at the house prior to him getting there.
Yes.
All right. And you say Maggie was there at the same time, or there before you, or there after you?
That's what I'm not absolutely certain about. I believe that Maggie came through the kennel entrance, and going back and looking at these records and these times, I believe she came through the kennel entrance while Paul and I were at the shop. But either way, I got to the house very shortly after Maggie got there.
Okay. All right. About what time was that, you think?
And looking at the records, I think that was a little after 8.
And you're saying Maggie was already there at that point?
When I got to the house,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what did you do after that?
I came back out, sat out on the couch to eat dinner.
All right. About what time was that?
A few minutes later, I mean, it didn't take me long to shower.
And you say Paul was already eating at that point?
He was.
And you say he left first?
What I said is he got up and he finished eating, and he left our immediate vicinity. Now, I don't believe he left at that point, given what I've looked at, time records and all. I believe that he was around the house for a little bit longer.
And just to be clear, again,
But I didn't see him.
all of this detail was people were hearing for the first time yesterday, like we talked about before, correct?
Say that again?
All of this detail that we're going through right now is not anything that you related before. We're all hearing this for the first time yesterday.
Objection, Your Honor. Fifth Amendment privilege.
Objection is overruled.
So, yes, I did not tell law enforcement. Actually, I don't think law enforcement asked me what I did when we first went to the house, but I clearly lied to law enforcement about what I said yesterday.
Okay. And all of this, the last time you supposedly saw your wife and child, all of this detail, you as a lawyer and a prosecutor didn't think that was important to offer on your own?
Oh, I think it's important.
You told this jury how cooperative you've been and how much information you wanted to provide, but you left out the most important parts, didn't you?
I left out that, I sure did.
You don't consider that one of the most important parts?
I think it's important.
Let me ask you this, were the dogs barking and carrying on or going out into the woods or acting like they sensed somebody was around that they didn't know?
Were the dogs acting like there was somebody around that they didn't know?
Yeah, like dogs do.
No.
No, they weren't.
There was nobody
There was no
around that the dogs didn't know.
Okay. Dogs didn't, to your indication, sense anything out of the ordinary. They were just chasing after the guinea.
There was nobody else around
All right, good.
for them to sense.
You've heard the kennel video. Would you agree with me that it lasts for about 50 seconds?
I agree with that.
So it would have ended around 8:45 and 45 seconds. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that.
Did you have the chicken out of Bubba's mouth at the end of the kennel video, or did it take longer than that?
You know, I can't remember exactly when in the video he came up with the chicken, but I would have had the chicken out of his mouth within 10, 15 seconds of Maggie saying he's got a chicken.
All right. And so then what did you do?
I put the chicken up.
All right. How long did that take? Did you get out of the golf cart to do that?
I did.
All right. And you had to go walk to where it was?
Well, yeah, I mean, a few feet, but I did that, yes.
All right. So how long did that take? I mean,
Seconds.
we're at 8:46 now. How long did that take?
Seconds.
Just seconds? All right. And what did you do after that?
Got back on the golf cart.
And what did you do after that?
I left.
You left.
Now,
Just
did I
jumped
leave?
on the golf cart and left.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. Did I get on the golf cart and leave that second? Probably not. But did I get on the golf cart and leave very quickly after that, I did.
Okay, yeah, I think you testified yesterday. I got out of there.
I did.
Why'd you get out of there so quick, Mr. Murdaugh?
Because it was chaotic, it was hot, and I was getting ready to do exactly what I didn't want to do.
You were getting ready to do what you didn't want to do.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to sweat. I was getting ready to work. Salutation when I'm leaving, I can't tell you what those were.
All right.
But it would have been something to the effect of, I'm leaving.
All right. Okay. But you would concede that there was at least some conversation, that you wouldn't have just put the chicken on there and ran back to the golf cart and taken off. Correct?
Without talking to Maggie, I would have never done that.
All right. All right. So let's, you want to say a minute? Does that sound about right?
A minute for what?
To have just whatever interaction it took for you to then, according to your new story, drive back to.
No, sir. It wouldn't have taken me a minute. It would
Not
have
a minute.
been, it would have said, it would have been, I'm leaving. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay. So 30 seconds?
I don't think it would have taken 30 seconds, but, I mean, I'm fine with you using whatever time you want to apply, but I don't think
I'm
it
just
would have
asking
taken that
about
long.
real life here and how people interact with one another, Mr. Murdaugh. I mean, so what you're telling this jury, I call you're fuzzy on these kind of details, is that you jetted down there, you dealt with the chicken, and jetted right back.
No, sir. No, sir. I didn't jet down there, and I didn't jet back. I got up after Maggie asked me to leave, after Maggie asked me to go with her, and I didn't. I got up. I went and got on a golf cart. I drove down there. I did what I did. I said, I'm leaving, or something to those words, and I went back.
All right. Well, if it's about 8:46, if the kennel video ends at 8:45 and 45 seconds, and it's about 8:46, we at least concede that maybe it was about a minute before you got on that golf cart and headed back. Just reasonable real life.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was that long, but maybe, sure.
All right. So.
But I don't think it was that long. I mean,
All right, well, how long do you
exactly
think it
what I
was,
thought
Mr.
was going to be
Murdaugh?
going on at that kennel, why I didn't want to go there to begin with, is exactly what was going on.
Yeah. Well, I get that. Again,
And I left.
are these also convenient facts in your new story that have to fit with the timeline now that that evidence has been thrown in your face?
No, sir.
Does that sound like real life to you, that you jet down there and jet back, Mr. Murdaugh?
Mr. Waters, as I just told you, I didn't get on my golf cart and jet down there. I didn't jet back.
The
Those are
reason
your-
why you have to be
Hang
so
on now,
fuzzy
Mr.
about
Waters.
these
Just a second.
details.
Mr. Waters, hang on.
Just answer before another question is presented.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Just a
answering your
moment.
question.
Just a moment. Are you responding to the last question?
Yes, sir. I'm responding to your question, and you're using words that I'm not using. And that's your
Do you agree
categorization.
I'm entitled to ask my questions to you, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm going to answer them. All I'm saying is, I'm taking issue with the manner in which you're changing what I'm saying.
So you
And
disagree this is a new story? You disagree with that characterization?
yes, this is the first time that this is being told openly.
And you disagree to my characterization that you've got a photographic memory about the details that have to fit now that you know these facts, but you're fuzzy on the other stuff that complicates that. You disagree with that?
I do disagree with that. I think that I have a good memory about a lot of things on this.
How about this? We got the kennel video ending at 8:45:45. So just to take care of the chicken, put it up. I was going to say 8:47, but somewhere around there. I think you said somewhere around there. Is that fair? Just to do whatever you need to do and get on that cart before you head back.
The kennel video ended at 8:45,
In 45 seconds.
8:46. It certainly could have been 8:47 before I left out of there.
Okay. All
I think it was sooner than that, but it could have been.
right. That's 60 seconds. And 75 seconds, correct? After it ends.
If it ends at 8:45 and 45 seconds, it's a minute and 15 seconds.
And you characterized it yesterday as I got out of there, right?
That is exactly what I did.
So if we're at 8:47, I think you said Giving you the benefit of the doubt, it's 2 minutes to get up back to the house, correct?
Approximately.
All right. And when you got back to the house, where'd you park the golf cart?
Same place I'd gotten it from, right where Murdaugh testified that it was.
All right. And what door did you go in?
I would have gone in the front door.
And if you left around 8:47, and it took about 2 minutes to get up to the house, what time would that make it, Mr. Murdaugh?
If I left at 8:47, and if it took me 2 minutes, that would make it 8:49.
8:49. And you testified you went inside and the TV's on, right?
I did go inside, and the TV was on.
Okay. And you laid down, is that right?
I did.
All right. Before you said you'd been napping for an hour or so, or napping that entire time, but now you laid down on the couch?
That's correct.
All right. And maybe dozed for a second,
Maybe.
according to your new story? How long did you doze?
If I dozed, extremely short time.
Extremely short time? Because you would agree with me that at 9:02, you're up and moving, according to the data.
I agree that according to that data, my phone's recording steps at whatever time it is, 9:02 something.
How long did it take you, if you're at the house at 8:49, how long before you went and laid on the couch?
I would have gone straight to the couch, probably. I may have gone by the sink, or I may have gotten a spit cup, but it would have been basically straight to the couch.
Straight to the couch.
Yes, sir.
And you're telling this jury that that's what happened, and you were back at the house at 8:49, and you lay down on the couch and dozed for a second, and then you were up with more steps in a shorter time period than you had done all day. So we got you back around 8:49, and you're leaving at 9:02, correct? And you didn't see any weapons down there. You just happened to be back there. You didn't hear anything at all. Did you hear anything at all, Mr. Murdaugh, during that time period?
No, I did not.
You didn't? Didn't you tell law enforcement that you thought you heard them pull up? Didn't you tell law enforcement that?
I did think they had pulled up.
All right, so that was that. You did think that?
Yes.
All right. So now you're saying there was a car pulling up?
No.
You didn't testify to that yesterday, did you, in your new version of events that
No, I don't,
construct?
Mr. Waters, I don't believe there was a car pulling up.
Okay. But that's what you told law enforcement, didn't you?
No, I told law enforcement that I thought they had pulled up.
All right. But you're saying you couldn't hear blackout shots supposedly, but you could hear that, correct?
I didn't say I couldn't hear blackout shots, but I'm saying that I thought when I got up from taking a nap, if I took a nap, but when I got up from laying down, as I was getting ready to go to my mom's, there was a point in time where I thought Maggie and Paul had come back.
You also told them that you thought you heard a wildcat, but maybe it was a person or something like that as well?
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say then?
I said when I went outside that there's a house cat that's gone wild, and he hangs around. He goes from hanging around the shop, goes from hanging around the house, different times. You might, and there'll be times you don't see him. And he had been around the house. And when I went outside, I believe that cat was over there.
Okay. And you made a point of mentioning
I
that
never-
to law enforcement.
I never thought it was a person.
All right. But you made a point of mentioning that to law enforcement, correct?
In the course of discussing it, I did tell them that.
But you never told them all this new story that you've constructed in light of this trial, is that correct?
I did not tell them that I went to the kennel. I lied about that.
And at the same time, you also looked at this jury and tried to tell them that you had been cooperative in this investigation.
Other than lying to them about going to the kennel, I was cooperative in every aspect of this investigation.
Very cooperative, except for maybe the most important fact of all, that you were at the murder scene with the victims just minutes before they died.
right?
I did not tell them that I went to the kennel.
Well, how powerful was that? And I don't know if you caught it, but Waters brought out, you were there minutes before they died, and you didn't talk about that, and you could see the wheels turning. And of course, his response is, I didn't tell him that I went to the kennels. I thought that was a really huge moment. And I don't know if anyone else felt that way. Anyway, I put a piece of candy in my mouth, so I'll go back to the video.
We'll take a break at this time for about 15 minutes, talking to the jury.
Tell me why that's typical.
If and when I'm going, now, it would be unusual if I was going out for any extended period of time, or if I was going, even on the property, if I was going somewhere for an extended period of time, I would usually have my phone. But for me to go knowing that I'm going to the kennel and coming right back, that's not unusual at all. I mean, you've heard the testimony about the service out there. The service is terrible. You have to be in a particular spot. And you have to find a spot.
So the answer is you don't know whether or not you took it down there
I believe that I probably didn't based on this data.
based on this, but unlike your photographic memory about other things, you don't remember whether or not you had your phone on you.
Mr. Waters, I've never claimed to have a photographic memory, but I do not specifically remember if I had my phone that night. I do not dispute it based on this data, and that's not unusual for me.
Just like you don't remember, according to your new story, the last conversation you had with Maggie. Do you know why so many phone calls were missing from the log around this relevant time period when law enforcement downloaded your phone on June 10th?
From my phone?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Did you delete them, Mr. Murdaugh?
Not intentionally.
Just around the time of June 7th, all these calls are missing, but you had nothing to do with that between June 7th and June 10th.
No, sir, I did not. And I did not delete phone calls from my phone. Mr. Waters, one of the most important things in this whole thing for me has been getting this data that I believe would exist. Phone calls and phone records would be part of that. I've been in enough civil cases and used phone records enough times to know that you delete a phone call from your phone, it doesn't disappear. So I can tell you, this jury, and everybody who's listening, that I did not intentionally delete phone calls. No, I don't recall.
Would you dispute me if I said you brought it up?
That I brought up what? Brought up what?
Phone, Mr. Murdaugh, your phone.
Phone calls to Maggie?
Yes.
That I brought up phone calls to Maggie to David Owens.
I'm asking you, is that one of the things that you talked about in your first interview with Dave Owen? That you pulled out your phone and started looking at it, that you brought that up? Do you recall that?
Well, but that's not what you asked, Mr. Owens. You asked me, was that the first thing that I talked to him about? And that was the discrepancy. I certainly don't dispute that Mr. Owens and I talked about phone calls.
Yeah.
But that's not what you said, so just to be clear.
Well, the real reason, Mr. Murdaugh, is that you as a lawyer and prosecutor are up at 9:02, finally having your phone in your hand, moving around and making all these phone calls to manufacture an alibi. Is that not true?
That's absolutely incorrect.
So that's just another circumstance and coincidence in this particular case. Right around the time that you lied to law enforcement about maybe one of the most important facts in the case.
Comment before the question.
It is an absolute fact that I am not manufacturing an alibi, as you say.
How do you remember so much detail about everything else, but you don't remember what you were specifically doing to generate 283 steps while you're making all these phone calls in the same 4-minute period?
I remember unequivocally, without any doubt, with as clear a mind as I could have at any time, that I never manufactured any alibi in any way, shape, or form, because I did not and would not hurt my wife and my child.
So why
So
can't
I
you
know
remember
for a
what you
fact
were doing?
that I never, ever, ever created an alibi.
Why don't you remember what you were doing when you were so busy for this 4-minute critical period?
I do
Other
remember
than
what I was doing.
Other than I was getting ready to go.
Well, because that's what I was doing.
Seen them a few minutes ago when you say you went down there and came right back. Why didn't you just take that quick little left 1,100 yards away and stop by? See why they didn't answer the call. You're obviously wanting to get in touch with them. Why didn't you go down to the kennels that were so close by?
There was no reason to. I mean,
Making multiple missed calls to Maggie, and she's so close. And there's a driveway right there. Why do you not just go down there and say, hey, guys, I'm heading over there?
it wasn't important to do that. Me making those phone calls is simply me letting, I believe I called Maggie and I called Paul, but that's simply me just letting them know that I'm leaving for a minute, I'll be back. The fact that they don't answer is not unusual at all. Now, it is odd, it is unusual that they never call me back. But at that moment, the fact that there's a missed call, when I know they're on the property, I mean, that doesn't even register at all. That's perfectly normal to try to call somebody who's on the property and not be able to get them. And as far as not going down there, there was no sense of urgency. Maggie was with Paul. You know, she should be as safe as she could be.
You want to hear it again?
No, sir, but I don't
So you
think.
made a conscious decision to lie right there, this early into an interview, sitting in.
Now, I wanted to just pause here for a moment because this to me was probably the best part of the day. And it was the thing that I hated the most over the last couple of days, and that's returning to the financial crimes. But I think what you're going to see here is Waters reminding the jury 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, up into the teens, the number of people that this guy lied to.
Correct?
I don't believe so.
You didn't make a conscious decision to lie?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that was lying at that point.
Okay, tell me why not.
Because Maggie had gone to the kennels and I was at the house.
Okay. So you think you were being, that was not a lie at that point?
I don't believe so at that point.
At what point did you decide to lie?
I'm not sure, but it was in that.
It was in this interview?
I believe that it was.
Okay, was this interview where you're sitting in the front seat, correct?
It is.
You're not in custody, correct?
I'm not in custody.
They're giving you water, letting you chew tobacco, treating you politely, correct?
They were treating me very politely.
So what was it that clicked? So you said it's in this interview that it clicked that I'm going to lie about the most important fact that I know?
I'm not sure exactly when in it that I lied, decided to lie, but I believe it was during this interview. I believe all those things that I talked about, you know, those things that had gone on, the things that people had said to me about don't talk to anybody without a lawyer. My partners all told me that, or a lot of my partners told me that. My dear friend, Chief Alexander, was one who said that. I overheard, I believe it was Sheriff Hill, I'm not positive, I overheard him tell, I believe Mark Ball or Gray Holmes, don't let him talk to anybody without a lawyer. And what I believe is that based on my distrust of SLED and getting in that interview, and I'm not positive about this, but I believe when he asked me, you know, about my relationship with my wife and my son, I believe that's when I decided to lie.
You
But
also
I'm not
left
positive.
out when you had the GSR too, because that's what you testified to yesterday.
That certainly contributed.
And your dope paranoia too, you said that as well, correct?
Well, those things are what triggered the paranoia that started as my addiction evolved.
Right. And so you're an experienced lawyer and you've been a prosecutor, and you took the advice of your law partners that you should have a lawyer there, as you read that as, oh, I should lie.
No, that's not an accurate.
Because that's not what
statement.
that means, is it, Mr. Murdaugh?
That's not an accurate statement, what you just said, Mr. Waters.
I just repeated what you just said. You said it was one of the factors was your law partners, and now you're blaming Sheriff Hill and Greg Alexander told you that you needed a lawyer before you talked to police, and you took that somehow as meaning I need to lie?
No.
As a lawyer and a prosecutor?
No, that's what you said, Mr. Waters, but
How am I mischaracterizing it from your perspective, Mr. Murdaugh?
Because-
I think isn't that what you heard? Isn't that what you just said? Excuse me.
no, sir, that's not what I said.
All right,
So,
well, say it again.
I believe those guys were trying to help me. I believe they cared about me. I believe they thought that I was in a condition such that I shouldn't talk to anybody. I mean, those guys had to prop me up, help me get myself together just to be able to go talk to David Owens. I mean, they were trying to help me. But before that, that was just one of the many things that I believe led to that situation sitting in there where those paranoid thoughts came to me. Them talking about not talking to anybody without a lawyer, Brian Murdaugh, checking my hands, the fact that I got a pocket full of pills in my pocket. I was the person who found Maggie and Paul. My distrust for SLED. All of those factors combined and made me decide to lie. I also know him asking me about Maggie and Paw contributed to that paranoia. All I'm saying is, I'm not disputing that I lied. I'm just saying at this point, you're saying I made a conscious decision to lie here, and I'm saying I don't think I made a conscious decision right there.
Okay, so it's later.
I believe so.
Had you already had your GSR done at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I had.
And you already talked to your law partners and heard Sheriff Hill. Now you're blaming him and
I'm not-
blaming
no.
Chief Alexander now as well for your lies.
No, sir, Mr. Waters.
You just added that one. You didn't say that yesterday. You just added that one.
Please be given the opportunity to answer the question. Objection.
You can finish your last answer.
Mr. Waters, I'm not blaming anybody. I accept full responsibility for what I did. What I'm saying is what I believe contributed to me doing that and the reason why I did that. I think those folks were trying to help me, so I don't blame them. I think they were worried about me.
Okay. I don't dispute that, but you're saying you took that advice as I need to lie.
Nah, what you're doing is you're isolating one single
I'm not
thing.
isolating anything. I've mentioned all the factors. You've added some new ones, but I mentioned all the factors that you're blaming for
No,
your
sir.
decision to lie.
That's not what you did. What you asked me is you said, I took my partners telling me not to talk to somebody without a lawyer as a reason to lie. And that's an inaccurate statement. That was one of the factors that went into a series,
decision to lie.
hang on, Mr. Waters, a series of events, all right, that caused me to have paranoid thinking, all right, and then I lied.
All right. But at some point it happened during this interview that you crossed over. You're saying that you came into this interview intending to be fully disclosing to everything, and something happened in this interview that sent you over the edge, and you said, hey, let me lie about the last time I saw my wife and child alive, supposedly, according to me.
I certainly didn't go into that interview, I believe, intending to lie. Mr.
Okay.
Waters, I wasn't capable at that point in time of planning anything or thinking through anything.
So somehow during this interview, all of a sudden, those senses came to you to plan and do that?
When I got to thinking in that paranoid way that normally, as I said, I could take a deep breath and make it go away. I never had a situation where it lasted more than a matter of seconds. That night, after all those things had happened, it didn't go away in a matter of seconds. And I decided to lie.
I want to make clear the grounds for our objection. Also would like to move to strike the question, strike the answer, and get a curative jury instruction that they are not to consider any failure of the defendant to come forward with exculpatory information after his arrest relating to the murder charges. Thank you.
Mr. Waters.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Clearly, this defendant has given statements on multiple occasions, and that operates as a waiver under Doyle. Additionally, my question was not so limited as Mr. Griffin says, and it was, in fact, the defendant who made a point of saying that he had repeatedly tried to talk and put that in issue, at which point this was directly responsive to what he brought up. Additionally, this was also, all that was discussed were public statements of his counsel, who was an agent on his behalf and attributable to him. So there's no Doyle violation here. If Mr. Murdaugh had claimed his right to silence from the beginning and had kept that throughout, then the state would be precluded from commenting on the exercise of his right to remain silent. But one thing we know about Mr. Murdaugh is he has not remained silent at any point during this process, and he's the one that brought up this false claim that he had been begging to tell the Kendall story, when in fact he did not do so until yesterday.
Doyle primarily addresses the issue of post-arrest silence. If an accused is silent following an arrest, then it's improper to comment on a post-arrest silence. It does not allow an accused or a person who's suspected to give contradictory information or to voluntarily give a statement or to voluntarily give a misstatement, as has been acknowledged here. I do not find any Doyle violation, and the record is protected. I certainly understand the defense raising any and all possible issues, and they can be raised, and you've done it here. The record is protected, but all motions are denied.
You testified yesterday about the side of the road,
Yeah, yes, sir.
and then you heard the testimony during the state's direct case about what you said on the 911 call. You heard that, didn't you?
I did hear that.
You heard the 911 call where you said you've been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you saw the video from the ambulance where you said you'd been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you heard the testimony from Ryan Kelly where you, again, went into detail and described this attack from an unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony about your interview on September 6th with law enforcement, in which you went into great detail and again described this unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony, and in fact the image was put in about how you sat down with a sled sketch artist and spent a period of time with her going forward and creating an image of the supposed assailant.
I did sit down with her. I was in the hospital, and they came in, sat down with me, asked me a bunch of questions. I answered their questions, and
Yes, you did. You
it
sat
came
there,
to it came up with a composite. Yes, sir.
sat there and answered their questions just as effortlessly and convincingly as you've been trying to do for the past 2 days. Isn't that correct?
No, sir, that's not true. In that hospital, I couldn't sit still. I was standing up. I was walking around. I was using the bathroom with the lady sitting right there. I was 2 days into not taking, 3 days into not taking pills like I had been. So, no, it wasn't effortlessly. But I mean, I told him what I told him. I don't dispute that I lied.
It was all lies, though, is the point, correct?
It was.
I mean, you're saying withdrawals, but you still were able to pull off lies in great detail,
I
correct?
lied to them. In September, that wasn't designed to gain me sympathy. That was designed for me not to be here because I didn't want my son to have to deal with the wake of the things that I had done.
But that's not the story you told. The story that came out of your mouth right away was the story of you getting attacked by some unknown assailant while you were trying to change a tire in run flats.
Well,
That's the story that you told.
That is the story I told, but that's because the man who shot me did not shoot me that day as I intended. And I had to have a story as to how I got shot, so I lied.
So you lied. And you're saying that people in your family and your friends didn't instantly believe that whoever these 12-year-old marauders were back to finish the job.
You keep using
And
the
it
term
happened just 2
12-year-old
hours
marauders.
after you'd been confronted by Chris Wilson.
I think probably some people may have thought that when it first happened, but I think like Randy, Ronnie, Mark, those guys, I think they knew very quickly that this was not, I think they knew this was something that I'd done.
Mr. Murdaugh, are you a family annihilator?
A family annihilator? You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No. I would never hurt Maggie Murdaugh. I would never hurt Paul Murdaugh, under any circumstances.
Say that.
Excuse me?
You say that, but you lied to Maggie, didn't you?
I did lie to Maggie
You lied to Paul.
sometimes.
You lied to your father.
I'm sure I did at some point.
Did you tell him all the stuff you had been up to over the years before he died?
No, I didn't tell him.
Did you lie to your brothers?
About financial things,
Yes.
I would have lied to Randy at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to him about the last time you saw your wife and son alive?
I did.
Did you lie to their wives?
I'm sure I did.
Did you lie to Marion Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to Bart Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to the Brandstetters?
Yes.
Did you lie to your best friend, Chris Wilson?
Probably.
Did you lie to your other friend, Barrett Bullware, when you took his money?
No, sir.
No.
I didn't lie like I told you. I didn't lie directly to him. I lied to him by omission, like we talked about. I mean, I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him at that time.
Did you lie to your law partners?
I did.
Did you lie to them about the kennels?
Some of them.
Did you lie to Mark Ball?
Yeah, based on what Mark said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Ronnie Crosby?
According to what he said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Johnny Parker?
I don't believe I ever discussed that with Johnny.
Did you lie to him about the finances when you borrowed that money in July of 2021?
I don't know if I lied to him about, I don't think Johnny asked me, I don't think I had to lie to Johnny about that, so I don't know.
Did you lie? Well, you certainly didn't disclose to him the truth when you borrowed that $250,000, did you?
I did not tell him what I was going to use it for.
I mean, didn't we have to say before that not telling the whole truth is the same as telling a lie?
Sure it is.
You don't think that's a lie, though?
I'm just saying, Mr. Waters, I'm not taking issue with that, but I don't even know that Johnny and I mean, Johnny had loaned me money numerous times. It wasn't any long sit-down discussion where Johnny wanted to know exactly what I was doing with it. That conversation would have been, I needed it, Johnny was always willing to help me, and that would have been the conversation. So, on that specific event, did I lie to him? I don't know.
Yeah, he ended up being out $477,000, didn't he?
He ended up being out a lot of money.
And thank you for your qualifications as to that. Did you lie to Lee Cope?
I don't know. I don't know if Lee Cope was around when I said that or not.
Did you lie to Danny Henderson?
I did lie to Danny.
Did you lie to Jeannie Seconder?
About finances, yes, I did.
You didn't ever talk to her about the kennels?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Did you lie to Annette Griswold?
I did.
Did you lie to Christy Gerald, your other secretary, or paralegal?
I don't believe she and I discussed. I would have at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to Michael Gunn?
I'm sure I did at some point, but I mean, Michael wasn't involved in any of this, so I don't know that any of this ever came up with Michael.
Did you lie to your clients? Did you lie to Pamela Pinckney?
I did.
Natasha Thomas?
I don't know that I dealt with Natasha, but I certainly lied about that.
Hakeem Pinckney?
Thanks for the 500,
Again, I don't
everybody.
know that I talked to
That might be
Hakeem,
how
but
many
I
people he
certainly
lied to at this
about
point. I
that.
don't know.
Arthur Badger?
I did.
The Plyler girls?
I'm not sure that I talked specifically to them, but I lied about that.
Dion Martin?
I lied to Dion.
Johnny Bush?
Yes.
Manuel Cristiani?
I didn't have any conversations with him, but I certainly lied about it.
Jamie Risher?
Yes.
Randy Drawdy?
Yes.
Jordan Jinks?
Yes.
Mary Duncan?
Yes.
Adriana Hay?
Yes.
Angel Gary?
Yes.
Christopher Anderson?
Yes.
Elise Mallory?
Yes.
Thomas Moore?
No.
You never lied to him? You just took his money. You never had to actually lie to his face, is what you're saying?
He and I never had a conversation, but I did take that. I did take that money.
Did you lie to Tony Satterfield just a couple of months before June 7th? We saw the text. You want me to get it out?
Just remind me. There's been a lot. Just remind me what it was.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 463.
And I don't remember the exact date. So
That was in April of 2021. Is that right? Where you text him and tell him how hard you're working on the case when in fact you had stolen millions of dollars from him? Tony Satterfield, who got up on the stand and told the jury about that?
I texted him on April 12th, so 5 weeks before June 7th.
Told him everything was okay. You're working hard, right? It's a complex case.
Yeah, I told him I was working on the case.
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria.
I'm sorry?
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria, who had served your family for many years.
That's correct.
And you stole millions from those boys.
I stole those funds.
And he and his family had started asking questions as we moved to June 7th. Didn't that happen?
No, I mean, there wasn't any rise in them asking questions, no, sir. I mean, he periodically checked in and asked me questions, but, you know, it had come out long before this, I believe in the Island packet, that there had been a settlement of $500,000. But, I mean, that had been months and months, if I'm not mistaken. And so I didn't notice any uptick in Tony asking questions, and I don't believe that there was any uptick in Tony asking questions before June the 7th.
So you just gratuitously out of the blue decided to lie to him and send that text? Or were there things going on externally that caused you to need to head him off at the pass before further questions started to be asked about money you couldn't pay back at that point in time?
Nah, I don't think there was anything. I mean, on April 21st, I don't know what external factors you're talking about.
Do you want to explain that one anymore?
Explain what?
Whatever you want.
I just want to answer your questions, Mr. Waters.
Lied to everyone about the side of the road, the people that came to stop the help and the ambulance folks and the 911 and Ryan Kelly and the composite sketch artist and all of them, correct?
I lied to a lot of people about that.
You know why people lie, Mr. Murdaugh? Because they know they've done something wrong.
For the most time, I do.
And you've been able to lie quickly and easily and convincingly if you think it'll save your skin for well over a decade. Isn't that true?
I have lied well over a decade.
And you want this jury to believe a story manufactured to fit the evidence that you brought forth just yesterday, after hearing this trial's worth of testimony.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Mr. Murdaugh, we went through this for a while, but you remember at the beginning of your testimony, I asked you whether or not you agreed that trying to explain your presence on the kennel video was the most important part of your testimony before this jury. You remember that? And you said, oh, not the most important. I said, was it at least important? You recall that from yesterday?
Yeah, I recall you asking those questions, yes, sir.
And you agree it's important, don't you?
I agree that is an important component, but I think there's a lot of important components.
And you testified yesterday and during cross yesterday and cross today. It's kind of evolved on the fact of the factors that led you to decide to lie at some point during that interview with David Owen, correct?
I disagree with that. No, I don't think those factors have evolved. I mean, you've asked some more specific questions, but those factors are still the same factors. You may have asked questions and gained a little more detail, but those factors haven't changed.
But it was the dope paranoia, it was the fact that the deputy took your GSR, it was the fact that your law partners and Greg Alexander and the sheriff were telling you you needed to have a lawyer before you talked to police. It was the factor that you got in the car with Dave Owen and thought he was somebody else from some case 10 years ago, correct?
That believing David Owens was the person involved in the case that I talked about was one of the factors that caused me to distrust SLED.
All right, and then also you said that they started
general.
asking you about, in that first interview, about your relationship with Maggie and Paula, and that's one thing you mentioned as well,
And
correct?
that was certainly something that contributed to me having paranoid thinking. It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
That was Sergeant Green, correct?
Yeah, that was Sergeant Green.
And at that point in time, sled was not there. No one had gotten GSR from you. Your law partners or Sheriff Hill were not there.
That's correct.
No one had asked you about your relationships. David Owen was not there,
That's correct.
but you still told the same lie. And all those reasons that you just gave this jury about the most important part of your testimony was a lie too. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdaugh?
I disagree with that.
Nothing further.
Well, there you go. I mean, what a way to end. I don't know if you caught what just happened there, but he had, of course, he went through all of those people that Murdaugh lied to. And then he got Murdaugh to say, yeah, the reason I lied on that night is because I didn't trust the sled agent. They just took my gunshot residue test on my hands. They were asking me about my relationship with Maggie and Paul. And those are the reasons why I got paranoid and I didn't want to tell the truth anymore. Now, before that, he threw his fellow lawyers on, and you remember there were a batch of lawyers telling him not to talk to law enforcement. I don't think any of them testified that they told him to lie to police. And then, let's see, I'm missing something else, but that's okay. Because then what he did is Waters pulled it all around and he brought in the cops that liked Alec, that treated Alec the way he was saying they cared about me. They were holding me up. They were my buoyancy. And then he said, no, you've been lying to us because you've been telling us all day long that it was because of the sled agent and the distrust and the lawyers and this and this and this. And no, here's proof that you lied even before that. And wow. Quinn, thank you so much. Can the transcripts be given during deliberation? Interesting question. I think they can. Maybe Michelle can jump in on that. And Quinn also had another question. Thanks for these kind donations, Quinn. The reason I asked is Waters said, so you hurt people you love. Yeah, I agree. That was really powerful. Well, I had another 20 minutes of video, but basically what it was is the defense coming back for their rebuttal where they reaffirmed what that Alec is a victim of this, that he some things were wrong, like he was concerned about Paul's feet swelling, and he showed pictures of Paul's feet swelling and Paul asking to get a doctor's appointment set up and a few other things. And then, of course, the prosecution came back and rebutted a few things, and they finished their testimony with Alec. He's now off the stand. They're taking the weekend off, and the judge says we'll start up on Monday. The defense is asking for permission when they have closing arguments, probably around Wednesday, that both of the defense attorneys can give motions or give closing arguments. And the judge is saying, nah, I don't do that. I'll think about it, but I don't do that kind of stuff. Figure out which one of you is going to do it. Of course, the prosecution argued against that anyway, but the prosecution will be ready. The word on the street at the conclusion of the hearing today was that the defense is probably going to call 4 witnesses, plan on about an hour each from those 4 witnesses. The state said they'll probably bring 2 witnesses back on as rebuttal, and then we go into the closing arguments. So this thing could go to the jury by Wednesday night, and then we see what happens with the jury and what they do. And so anyway, Jen Lowe's asking, is the closing on Thursday? The judge was saying he really wants to try to have the closing argument start Tuesday or Wednesday. So I don't know, Jen Lowe. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But wow, that was a marathon tonight. So good to be with all of you, and thank you for your support. Make sure you're hitting the like and subscribe button. I don't know if we hit the 600 on the thumbs up, but please give some thumbs up, and maybe we can find out if we hit the 600 number. Think about subscribing, folks. We really appreciate being able to grow alongside you. And I hope you all have a great weekend. This was quite a weekend. Somebody said, what are we going to talk about next week? Well, don't forget, day bills are still coming. The judge is trying to figure out whether he's going to separate the two and let them go into separate trials. And if you caught the news in the Moscow murders, they boarded up that house. They're going to raise it and turn that into a little park and a monument where that home was, where the 4 college students were murdered. So that's a pretty good thing to do, actually. I think that'll be nice. In fact, the owners of the house apparently have donated it to the university, and that led to the idea, let's create a little memorial there for the kids, and we'll see what goes forward. And so what will we talk about next? Holy cow, there are so many wacky cases out there. But let's get through Murdaugh, because what's going to be really interesting is when the jury comes back with their findings, regardless of which way it is, what the responses are going to be really interesting, in my opinion. So, folks, thanks so much for supporting Profiling Evil, and I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you at the next crime scene.